Welcome to the Three Orcs channel. This is David, and today we're going to go over starter character classes and races in Greyhawk in the Verbobonc area campaign. Typically, this would be great for the Temple of Elemental Evil module. Today I have a guest finally on my channel. This is Samus. He's in one of my campaigns. Samus, go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
Hello. So what character are you playing in my campaign right now?
We have a rogue. Well, we decided to multi-class, right? A rogue,
Yeah.
Primary rogue, secondary ranger, right? Human, male, and we want to fill the role of lock picker, trap finder, mostly, right?
Yes, the group was missing one. They needed one badly, and so they were stumbling through dungeons without any help with traps or treasures or scouting in the dungeon there. I know you joined the campaign about 15 sessions in, and so you weren't able to start from the very beginning. And this video is about starting a new campaign from the very beginning, making a first level character, and writing a background. When you want to run a role-playing game, you generally want some sort of background for your character to role-play from. I know some DMs would rather make this up as they go along. They run more hex crawls, more randomness in their campaigns. I run more of a full-fledged epic campaign that extends all the way to level 15 and beyond. And the campaign I'm running right now that's like that is the Temple of Elemental Evil. I'm not saying I don't run other campaigns the other way, but this one is expected to run its full length to actually beat that module and keep going in the world around you. So it's very important to have some sort of background for your character in this campaign. Not only is it good for role playing, but I think it's good to be cemented, have a foundation of what your character's from and who they are. And since this region is so well developed, you'll see that it's a lot easier to do that and for the players to feel connected to the land itself. And I created some articles that actually touch on that. So Samus, I know you started the campaign around session 15, so you didn't really get to do that too much. What was your idea for your start?
Was supposed to be something Irishy, as I said. I think I used that word before, Irishy. So the character is supposed to have an Irish accent. The origin is a decent upbringing. I think it was a farming family, sheep farming.
Yes.
There was some kind of rebellion, right? That the people wanted to oppose the local lord who was being. I don't remember the exact details of how this lord was being oppressive, but my character Seamus wanted to take part, wanted to do his part, and he wanted to be a ranger, but there was no room among the rangers for him to occupy. So someone told him, go meet this rogue, this master thief who's retired down the way. And he gave him a tool set a skill set to help in that way. Something like infiltrating some underground entrance into the keep or whatever to assist in throwing down the depredations of the local lord, something like that.
Yeah, I brought your character article up on screen here, and
right.
we came up with a background, what you just explained, and we started off with a slice a day in the life in Verbobonc, starting the campaign. God's Day, reading the 4th day of worship in the city of Verbobonc, and this whole background has been flushed out here with a link to your Thieves' Cant article and a Burglar's Pack. And your current location right now is in the village of Hamlet. And you're human, dark brown eyes, 6'1", long brown hair. You got a catchphrase. Some people in this city are too rich for their own good. Luckily, they have me to give them a hand. These are locations you've been to so far in this campaign. And this is all day one right here, this actual article. And then we finally get on the road to the village of Hamlet. And then, of course, this is from the module, getting there. And that's when you meet the rest of the players in the campaign. So that's how we started you off on Session 15. But the other players in this campaign, they actually started from scratch. They actually started from where they're from before they met. And on Session 1, they met. They all got together in the city of Verbobonc. And that's what this video is going to go over. So that's your article character. And what's great about this is it lets you be able to roleplay more with a solid background, like who you are, and it gives you some meat to draw from. Because you don't expect the players to know everything about Greyhawk, the world of Greyhawk, and the city of Verbobonc, and the Viscounty of Verbobonc, and the surrounding countryside, and the village of Hamlet. Players don't know this stuff. They shouldn't. They shouldn't have to go into the box set and read about this stuff, which they never do. It's up to the DM to convey that to the players. Well, if I can convey some of that in the character background, that helps. That's a win-win. It helps the player get more connected to the campaign. It helps them get some information to draw from to roleplay more. So that way they feel like they're part of the world. And we did a pretty good job, I think, of you joining them on Session 15. So if I was to start a new character in a campaign, it doesn't have to be the Temple of Elemental Evil, but if you're starting the campaign in the Viscounty of Verbobonc area, I have some articles that I wrote for the different classes, some good ideas where you could be from. So real quick though, where do we have you from exactly? Do you remember? Etterbuck.
Right.
Yeah. See that?
Oh, right.
It's a bright new morning in Etterbuck. You're awakened by gongs ringing and ringing. The loudest is from the Cathedral of the Damned Men, which is just a cathedral I made up for that. I created that town from scratch with a map and everything. And the villagers pray to several lawful good gods. It talks about the nobles and your connection with the politics in the area and who your master is and your family and all that. So you're from Etterbuck, which is interesting because in my thief article, I don't really have Etterbuck as a choice for a rogue. I don't have that as an example. You can be from anywhere, but my articles actually give you some pointers of where you could be from. Just suggestions. Doesn't mean you have to be from there. So let's go ahead and look at Clerics real quick. So Clerics can be from almost anywhere, obviously. From Valuna to Divers to the Freelands and Fiorandi and Selene. And the map here shows that to the north of Verbobonc is, let's zoom out, that's Fiorandi to the north. The Gold County is one of their baronies. To the west is Valuna, the Devarnish barony is the eastmost barony of Valuna. The red lines is the border of Verbobonc. And to the south is the fairy kingdom of Selene, where all the elves live. And then to the east is the gnarly forest, where elves and humans live, druids and rangers. So, and Divers is right here at the mouth of the Knive Dive, the lake of the unknown depths. And then far to the east is the city of Greyhawk. And it looks like it's right there at the edge of the map. So going back to the article, you can really be from anywhere. So this guide is the most common priesthoods of the area. The gods are listed in the Master Campaign website. So here we go. Cuthbert. Well, the worship of St. Cuthbert is the fastest growing religion in the central Flanash. It's a strong backing from the free city of Greyhawk to Valuna and from Thurandi to Selene. Their temples or shrines are commonplace. The land of Verbobonc, known as the Temple of Elemental Evil, and where evil has gained a foothold in the past, the stalwart cudgelers patrol and protect the innocent and with unwavering zeal. Tireless efforts of the Church of St. Cuthbert which is an organization. It's the church. The Viscounty has accepted it as a state-favored religion. So that's the number one religion in the Viscounty of Verbobonc. They're at the top of the hierarchy, right below Viscount Wulfric in the year 576 Common Year. There's politics involved with that. Part of those politics is one of the reasons why they're placed as the number one. And the locations I have listed here could be are locations that I put churches at. All these locations have a Church of St. Cuthbert there. So you could easily be from the city of Verbobonc and even know the Archbishop, because that's where he's located. Humphreys, I believe his name is. Rhinehurst, which is to the west. Falmouth. All these villages here are in the Viscounty of Verbobonc. In most cases, the abbey is not located within town, but just outside of it. So this would help a player decide where he's from. He doesn't have to be from one of these places. He can use his imagination and figure out where he could be from somewhere else. But if you needed some help and you want some solid background and information on where you're from, these are fully fleshed out, detailed villages that you can just go to, like Falmouth, and it tells you everything you need to know about that village and all the NPCs there and everything, and the maps and all that stuff. So this helps players get into the campaign faster and gives them a solid foundation on where they're from. So how have you heard much about St. Cuthbert since you started the campaign?
Well, I read a little bit about it. We've talked about it a little bit. Am I allowed to say the names of other characters in the campaign?
Yeah, go ahead. Nobody knows them.
So Heinrich is Heinrich the cleric of St. Cuthbert? Is that right?
No, he's Pelor. He worships the god of sun, Pelor.
Of course, yeah. So, is there no relation then between St. Cuthbert and Pelor?
No, Pelor is a Flan deity. It's a circle of life. The sun is part of the circle of I guess the earth, the life of the plant, of the Flaness. It's part of the circle or something. It's in the history background. And they're all that pantheon is related with each other, where St. Cuthbert is from a different pantheon. It's not Flan at all. And
so is the you said the St. Cuthbert is the state religion, basically.
pretty much, it says here that because what the history of it is the Archbishop himself saved Wulfric's life at the Battle of Emridy Meadows. That's one reason why. And also, the people are listening since that battle. They want to follow leaders with common sense, straightforward defense of the realm, support the law, and that's what St. Cuthbert supports. And a lot of people seems to agree a lot. They agree with a lot of what St. Cuthbert has to say. His priesthood does. So they're flourishing, and they're spreading, and they're taking over, much to the concern of the other churches. You know, like my Heinrich's character of Pelor is not too happy with the fact that his church in Verbobonc is not quite as big as the chapel, the Cathedral of Trithrin, or the Cathedral of St. Cuthbert. You know, his is a little smaller. And so he kind of role plays with that too. He's always trying to push his agenda to get people to follow him. So if you wanted to be... What's that?
Sorry. Is there then conflict between those who follow St. Cuthbert and Pelor?
Well, actually, the allies of St. Cuthbert is Mahahane, Zodal, Jeremy, Rao, and Cord. His foes are all evil deities, but Fultus, the blinding light, they often come to blows, or they come to a lot of disagreements. And also he often comes into disagreements like with Trithrin, because they're always against the establishment, where St. Cuthbert's more law-abiding. So that's all part of the history of the gods. Each god and each church has their own information, their background, and how their characters, how their non-player characters react within the world. So the next one is Thrithrin. The Cathedral of Thrithrin is the largest cathedral. It's the center of that faith, and all of Flanaess is in the city of Verbobonc. It's a massive cathedral, and this is one of the only churches in all of the city of Verbobonc where the actual archbishop himself of the entire faith is located at. So if you really want to get to the top, to the one man that runs the entire faith, that's where he's located at. And they take a huge prominent position within Verbobonc because of their history too. Because 300 or 400 or 500 years ago, the Great Kingdom tried to invade. And a platoon of Thrithrin paladins drove them back. They saved the city. And because of that, they're so highly revered in the city. Even though they caused a lot of trouble. That's a chaotic good god. They're always against the nobles. There's always a lot of political tension. They're always causing trauma. And they're rioting all the time. Always shouting down the nobles and trying to strive against them because they think the nobles are a bunch of thieves. And so Thrithrin causes a lot of trouble. So if you like to be good, but you like to cause a lot of trouble and have a strong backing, Thrithrin is definitely a good choice. And so their locations, by the way, the largest cathedral of all the Flanaess, where the highest archbishop is located at, Cornelius Arx, is in the city of Verbobonc. Also, locations-wise, down here at the bottom, they have a place in Rhinehurst, which is to the west. It's a small city. And then also, the faith is well established in Furondi, to the north. So if you wanted to, you could be from Furondi easily, because there's more churches up there. I believe you revere Thrithrin. Your character does. And why is that?
Yeah, Seamus. Well, I remember right from the article, Seamus gets swept up in one of those parades that were being held the day that he was that in Verbobonc, or was that at what's the name of the place?
Etterboc. Etterboc is the first village south of Verbobonc, the city. You're like 10 miles away. So it's a fairly large village you're from. So you often have taken trips to the city to go visit the city for different reasons. And the one time you did go, you witnessed a huge procession of a parade by the Thrithrin priesthood on Holy Day. And I guess that greatly impressed you for what they had to say. They had a huge speech. And the speech really impressed what they had to say, and I guess you decided to follow them. In name, I guess only. It's not like you're a cleric. You're a rogue or a thief. But you still, even in the movie Conan, Conan, comments on Crom once in a while or swears by Crom, even though he's not a cleric. So everybody should have somebody they always call upon when they want to swear, or a battle cry or something they believe in.
Well, yeah, in the ancient world, there was many deities, and that inspires this fantasy environment, I guess. And,
yes.
Of course, there's a great variety of actual piety from individual to individual, right? And I think the way that Seamus, the thief, lives his faith out would be something like his alignment is chaotic good. So he thinks there's great value in doing the right thing, but I think in conjunction with the whole formative experience where they had to band together and take down the local lord who was harassing the people, and then coming to the city and seeing this parade, and then learning about Tretherian, basically the god of freedom or the god of liberty. He was very struck by what I guess, two precepts for himself is to live free, and to do good when to do good to them who have it coming, I guess.
Yeah.
And not to worry too badly about if there are tyrants. And one of the ways that I justify his beefiness with a good deity is he will not hesitate to steal from tyrants or from evil people. But if there's a good person, whether their alignment falls lawful or not, he hesitates to want to steal or harm good, decent people, and pretty much he won't. So in a role-playing sense, if there's an obstacle and it involves stealing or harming someone who is good, or even maybe not good, but also not evil, he will have probably a crisis of conscience, and it might cause problems for the party and dancing, and they have to find another solution. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you put a lot of thought into that, and that's wonderful. I know this speech right here that I put on the screen is what converted you. The speech by the Archbishop himself in your one visit to Verbobonc. And I wrote that out for you, but it touches upon a lot of politics with the nobles in the region, and that's something I wrote.
I'll have to read that again. I'll have to read that again, and so I have to remind myself where I come from.
It's a lot of screaming. Trithurin teaches us to deserve life and ability to choose their own place in the world, and those who would place others in shackles or control them with oppressive laws must be toppled. It's just a whole rant. And you can see why, after that rant, why the authorities in Verbobonc have their hands full trying to deal with this. And it's not just one guy talking to, a dozen people listening to him, in a picket line. No, it's a crowd of hundreds of people participating in this. So it's not like you can just arrest one guy. And then they go off and start causing a lot of trouble. So I'm glad I was able to get that for you. So that was Trithurin. The next one's Reo. Reo used to be the prominent deity of Verbobonc, because it is the prominent deity of Valuna. They let's see what it says here. He's the god of peace, reason, and serenity. I have a whole speech by him too, and a prayer. And basically, when there's peace, and you want law-abiding citizens to obey fair and just laws, the lords will worship Reo, because he's a great mediator when it comes to problems in the world. And usually a noble will have a priest of Reo to go to, or you might have him in his household, like a private priest. And right now it's come to the point where St. Cuthbert's taken over the hearts and minds of the people, that very few of the regular commoners will worship Reo. So only now, at this time, only most of the nobles only worship Reo. So Reo is instrumental in a lot of the politics and the things that are going on in this land, but the common people don't refer to him very often, don't worship to him. So to be a priest of Reo, though, you could be from the city of Verbobonc, which has a huge cathedral. It's a monastery. It's connected right to the walls of the castle itself, Greyfist Citadel. So it's part of the defense of the castle. That's how prominent it is when it comes to the nobles. And it's a huge facility with many buildings. And the Tower of Reason, which is awesome. Also, they have a monastery over in Swan, which is to the west. And they have the Cathedral of the Damned Men in Etterbook, where you're from. They have a cathedral there too. But it's because the Lord there is a follower of that, and they're rather ruthless rulers in that land, and they want trying to force everybody to worship Reo there. but it's not quite working. But unfortunately, there's no other churches that I developed in the region of the Viscounty. But there's many of them in Valuna. So you could be easily from any of the cities or villages of Valuna, too. And there's a few in Furondi. I'm not so sure about beyond those borders, as that's all the research I've done, because I don't want my players in the campaign to come from too far away. It'd be get a little bit out of hand, and it's a lot of work. Okay, so Mahahane is one of the latest, newest gods of the common pantheon. C answers to the churches of St. Cuthbert and Bahamut and Pelor. She's a goddess of knights, so a lot of knights will worship her. It's one of the major churches in Thurondi. I don't really have a church dedicated to her in the Viscounty, but it does say the Knights of the Order of the Heart of Furondi and Verbobonc do venerate her. So if there was any shrines, it would be more of a private one, like only knights worship her. And of course she has her paladins and she has her knights, her fighters. I would assume in my campaign, the way I look at it is a knight's household would have a shrine dedicated to her if he had a big enough estate, and then maybe they have a cleric and that he worshipped Mahahane, and he's maybe a paladin or probably most likely a knight. That's how I would look at it. And if a character wanted to be something like that, I would insist that he had to be a paladin or a knight. I guess you could be a fighter, but it'd be kind of weird. It'd be kind of weak, I think. But you could do it. Depends how much imagination you have. You can put that together. So you'd actually have to find a knight or a noble to connect with for your background. So that way you have access to that faith. Because there is no public ones that I have developed. Of course, a DM could make one. All right, so Heronius has many places in the Viscounty. The Abbey of the Valorous Knight, which is located in the Viscounty of Verbobonc at Larneystow. And it's more like a monastery, a militaristic monastery. And so that's a huge militaristic compound where a lot of training is done. And that's where the bishop is located at. So if you wanted to be from the head of it all, that's definitely, of the Viscounty area, that would be the place to be from. You'd have lots of trainers, you'd have lots of access to materials and information and training. That's another reason why I created all this. I did mention this at the beginning. It's not only awesome for role-playing to be able to know where you're from, but it's also, it gives you knowledge, gives you access to information and resources. If you know you're from somewhere, like Abbey of the Valorous Knight, and you know what kind of resources they have available, you know in the campaign what resources you have available to you. So you can always go back there or send a message to get something going, to get materials, information, help, whatever it is, spells. So that's what's great about that. It energizes the players. It gives them resources at their fingertips to be able to do something in the campaign. It makes them feel like they really have something they can go to, rather than some vague, hand-wavy thing that most DMs do. Like, yeah, you can go back to your master or your school and go ahead and buy some spells or get some equipment or whatever. And they really don't have a lot to do with the campaign. All right, so then we have the Temple of Heronius and Verbobonc itself for the Knights of the Holy Shielding. So that's another big one. That's where a lot of the knights are. So the knights actually go to that cathedral to worship. There's also Knights of the Watch. They have strong ties to the faith found in Verbobonc. Knights of the Watch report directly to the Viscount himself. He protects him, I believe. Let's see, look it up. Yep. Well, stout soldiers from the lands of Bissell, Grand March, Geoff, and Keeland. They're watchers. Well, I'm sorry, I was wrong. The Knights of the Watch is a knighthood located in Bissell, Grand March, and Geoff, and Keeland to the south. It's way south of the Lortmill Mountains. So it really doesn't have anything to do with the Viscounty. The Viscounty has Knights of the Holy Shielding. So if you wanted to be a paladin or a knight or a fighter or a cleric of Heronius, your master could be from the Knights of the Watch, and maybe he came from Bissell or whatever. But I would prefer somebody to be from somebody more local. So anyway, keep going. There's a church at Lawrence Ford to the west, another one in Swan to the west, and here in the city. So if you wanted to be somebody like that, those are good locations to be from. The Valorous Knight has maps and everything, I believe. They got members, they got NPCs. They have the Brotherhood of the Lance that you could finally join when you become honored enough. Things like that. Okay, Alona. Alona is dual. Human side is called Aluna, and the elves that worship Alona, they call her. I didn't write it down here, but it's right here somewhere. I didn't have that memorized, did I? It's a weird name. Alona and Elenastra. Elenastra. Yeah. So that's what the elves call her. It's a little bit different. And they're not at odds with each other. There's a whole history here in the clergy. So, generally, you'd probably be from the Gnarly Forest. So there's a small clan in the Gnarly Forest of religious leaders from the elves. They're called Clan Enlenafel. Clan Enlenafel. There's 4 clans in the Gnarly Forest of elves. And this is one of them. And they have a strong presence of clerics and druids there that worship Elenastra. So it talks about how that clan has seers, mystics, lore masters, and grove guardians. So that's a good choice. Also, the 2 distinct factions of the church, the human side is Flan Goddess, and she's sister of Obadhai. So that faith can be almost anywhere in Valuna. There's actually small shrines in some of the small hamlets with a shrine to Alona in it. Mostly these are close to the border of the Gnarly or in the Gnarly Forest. So it's possible to be from the human side, from somewhere in that area. Or if you're half elven or elven, you would be from the elven side in the forest. I guess you could also be from Selene to the south, the actual kingdom of Selene that closed their borders. They're not helping anybody at this time. Queen Selene, she closed her borders. She's not taking any visitors, and they're not helping or assisting any of the countries around her. It's their own problems. Deal with it. We're shutting our borders. We're tired of you guys. Bakab is the god of magic. He doesn't have much of a presence here, so members of the clergy of Bakab would be like in Firundi, the largest church of center of worship is there. In the city of Pantern of the barony of Littleburg. There's not that many in Firundi. It's been growing. There's also a major temple in Divers, on the mouth of the Dive Lake. So if you wanted to be from there, those are the major churches that are located at. Doesn't mean you have to be from there. Maybe your master, some headsmage or somebody has his own tower or his own village or whatever, and he just worships Bakab. And of course, you being his apprentice, you start worshiping Bakab. That could happen that way. So there's ways to get around that. You don't necessarily have to be from those 2 locations. Zilchis is all about money, finances, the kingdom. So Divers and Verbobonc are hand in hand. They're huge merchant houses on both. There's many merchant houses and guilds in Divers. And Zilchis is like one of the number 1 priesthoods there, churches there. And it's a huge organization. And a lot of people don't do any transactions without a cleric of Zilchis around. And they're emotionless. They take business. They're ruthless in business. There's a place in Verbobonc for Zilchis. I think it's a bank and a church or something like that. So you could be from there, or you could be from Divers. I don't have any other churches to Zilchis anywhere in the Viscounty. They're all small villages and hamlets. I guess one of the moneylenders and maybe Verbobonc hamlet might worship Zilchis, but he's not a cleric. So, your character, if you were to be a cleric, you probably have to be from these locations of Divers or Verbobonc. Okay, Pelor. There's a big church of Pelor in Verbobonc, and it's a common faith for the common folk of the land. They are a member of the governing council of abbots. They're followers of the Sun Father, and that recently ascended from the Shield Maiden. So, they work with the priest of Mahahane. So the major temple, the number one major cathedral for Pelor, is located in Divers, with the big city there, which is on the edge of my campaign world that I'm running. Also, there's a temple in the city of Verbobonc. The Archbishop Charles Evertide runs it. So if you came from there, you would know him and some other PCs that I created. And then, of course, you have one in Cienega to the south of Verbobonc. It's a small chapel. It's not that large, but they have a priesthood. They have a deacon there, the Von Cross. And then they have another small chapel in Thaymouth, which is to the east. So there is a couple small chapels to Pelor in the Viscounty. And a whole major one in Verbobonc and another one in Divers. So Foltis, the Blinding Light. There's a major temple in Verbobonc. They're a smaller member of the Council of Abbots. They lack leadership with vocal, active participants at events occurring in Verbobonc. So, the place, that's the only real chapel they have, I believe, that I created in the campaign world. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Foltis and St. Cuthbert have an enmity to each other. So they're always striving to diminish the influence of the other one. So you can see them arguing if they're in the same area, doing the same thing. That's the thing about St. Cuthbert. There's the local watch of St. Cuthbert. They patrol the streets in 2s and 3s and 4s. And half the time, that patrol has a billet of St. Cuthbert with them. So they're there to enforce the laws as well. And there's no bribing them. It's often you can get a watch to look the other way or just blow it off and give you a warning or bribe them. Sometimes depends, on the situation. But if there's a billet of St. Cuthbert with that patrol, you can forget it. They're gonna crack you over the head with that cudgel. They're gonna bring the law down on your head hard. So Foltis is a minor church, and I don't think I have any other locations in the Viscounty for them. There might be one, but I might have forgotten. I think there might be one in let's see, who's that? Penwick. Penwick might have one. Let's go ahead and look at it. Church of the Shining One. Church of the Shining One, and is also a church for Cuthbert, I believe. Yeah, right there. Church of St. Cuthbert of Penwick. The Church of the Shining One. Pelor. That's a different one. So, Foltis. We're talking about Foltis. Okay. So anyway, Foltis doesn't have a lot of representation here. Doesn't mean there can't be one. If you can come up with a reason for a background where maybe an unknown transplant of a cleric that happens to be living in some small village for some reason, and happens to be a cleric of Foltis, maybe he trained you for a reason or two. That could always happen, but I haven't developed any chapels in any of the villages except the one in Verbobonc. Okay, Farlong. He's very active. He blesses all the caravans, individuals that journey. Fair journey, friend. He has a chapel in the city of Verbobonc. He has a way station in Lawrence Ford and Twilight Falls, which is in the Gnarly Forest. He also has another one in to the south at Ostwerk on the border of Selene. That's where you guys are heading next. And you also find various little tiny shrines here and there, almost all the villages. Like not a way station, but just like a little shrine off the side of the road with nobody there, no roof or nothing. just a little statue or something. And sometimes, and travelers will often give donations to it, like throw some dirt or some flowers on it and keep going with a prayer to Farlong for a safe journey. But there are an actual small way stations. Way stations are a place where you can stay for free and get free bed and board and food. So then we have Istis. They have a small temple, a chapel within Verbobonc, and they call it I didn't put it down what it was called, but it's located there in Verbobonc. There's also a larger church in Divers and Greyhawk. Istis is not going to be have any chapels anywhere else, but of course there could always be that one cleric Istis that could be somewhere for some reason, and maybe that's your master. Meahain, I already did that one earlier. Celestine is in Greyhawk, and I don't have any. Yeah, the closest church is in Greyhawk. I don't have one here in the Viscounty. Lear, that's the god of the arts and poetry. A lot of sorcerers and wizards worship Lear. So there's one. The Conservatory of Lear is located in Verbobonc, and that's a school of art and music. It's a big facility. So you could be a cleric bard if you wanted to, or just a cleric. So yeah, easily. They service the Silver Consortium, which is the Wizards Guild there next door. So they have close ties. Their library does. So that's something to think about for a background. Alda Damara, he has a shrine in a hostel. It's a hostel shrine gambling house, and it's in Verbobonc. And it's kind of part of the Thieves Guild. So that's something to think about. They also have entertainment there, like bards. And simple shrines are common in public houses. And there's also a small shrine in Twilight Falls, which is on the border of the Gnarly Forest. Or within the Gnarly Forest, on the Verbobonc side. Okay, Cord, powerful Sul god. He is worshipped by the barbarian tribes, but there can always be a wandering cleric that happens to be stopping and staying in Verbobonc for some reason, and maybe you became his disciple. Obed High. So this is another one of the old gods of the old faith. He cares more about nature, the forest, than people. Where the other gods, Bari, I care more about the people. So it's two different things here. Obed High is the one that doesn't like you chopping down the trees as much. They don't like growth. They don't care about your village. They don't care if you have to eat. You're there to nurture nature. And of course, anywhere from within the Gnarly Forest and Selene. There's also a shrine at Humming's End and Ruby Falls. Those two shrines are within the Gnarly Forest. So easily you can be from there. There's also small shrines at some of the smaller villages. In fact, I think I have the Druid at the village of Hamlet is the Druid of Obed High, I believe. But maybe I'll have to rethink that, because he cares more about the people, though. So maybe I'll have to rethink that one. Okay, then we got Verity. They commune with nature. The Druids. They have a shrine. And, of course, you'll find the clerics in the Gnarly Forest. There's a small shrine in Verbobonc, outside the walls. There's also a Druid Grove in Penwick. Penwick is right here. It's to the southeast of Verbobonc. So some of these locations I was talking about earlier, that's Etterbuck. That's where you're from, to the south of Verbobonc. And then if you go east, past the Fens of Tor, the swamp, into the Gnarly Forest, you'll see Twilight Falls here. And you go south. Where's the other one? The other one's off the map, sorry. I'll have to look at the other map. I'll zoom in for you guys. So here's Twilight Falls. And then Humming's End is here. And up here is Thaymouth and Oakham. So what was the other one we're looking at called? Oh, Ruby Falls. Where's that at? Ruby Falls. I know it's around here somewhere. How come I don't see it? That's weird. Oh, there it is. Way up north. At the very corner of the Viscounty. To the northeast there. It's kind of strange how that's shaped. Because everything south of the Veldiva River is the Viscounty. So you could be from any of these villages for any reason. And I try to put a lot of churches and chapels in each one of these villages. So it's possible to be from any one of these. But of course, you can be really from any of them if you come up with a good enough reason. All right, so let's finish this article out. Bury, there's a chapel of Bury in Ostberg to the south. There's one at Corbin to the west and Deschutes Ford to the south. Small shrines. They care more about life-giving soil and strong foundation of a safe home. These clerics and druids care more about the families of the people. And they're of the Old Faith. So that's another Old Faith god. So Bury, Biori, Bury, and Biori and Bury. Biori and Bury are they care about the people, where Obed High does not so much. They care more about nature. Okay, Elona is another god of the Old Faith, and of course we talked about that earlier, the human side and the elven side. And she cares more about like hunting and nature and the trees and the forest. Okay, then we got Phaeton, Selous, god of nature, beauty, and farming. So this one is interesting because it's a newer god of the Sul pantheon, and they care about agriculture and farming and domesticating animals. It's different. It's not nature. But so that's they have. I made their chapels more like an agricultural center. I have one in Corbin, Deschutes Ford, and Siena Valley, right here. Marika, goddess of agriculture, farming, and home. This is Ardi with the Sul, a mix of Ardi with Sul. So I got another one in Corbin, Mole, Letterbook, and Siena Valley. And then we got Zodal. They help people. Oh, these gods, they're about healing people, caring for people and healing them. It's a healing god. And their major temples and divers, called the Shrine of Absolution. In the Verbobonc, this place, a chapel called Sisters of Mercy Hospital. And then in Penwick is Church of the Gentle Hand. So if you wanted to play a cleric, that's a healer. Those are great places to be from. Full support to their churches and a good network. And they're also very highly important in Valuna, I believe. Let's find out. Let's see. I don't think. No, let's skip that. Okay. Next is Rud. Rud is the luck bringer, Lady Luck, the laughing goddess. Probably a bard or a rogue might worship Rud. He has a chapel in Verbobonc City called Chapel of Rud. There isn't any other that I know of. Noradbo is popular in the barbarian lands and large cities. The big churches of the Big Gamble. So there is a church in Verbobonc, in Divers, in Greyhawk, and the Wild Coast. And of course, the barbarian states. So that's a good network. Ula, Stone Wife, goddess of the hills and mountains. There's a shrine actually in Mole and Swan. It's interesting is that's it's dwarven and humans worship Ula. So it's kind of weird. Jaskar, Sul, god of hills and mountains. So they're honored by dwarves and gnomes. And which is interesting. I don't understand that, how Sul pantheon is honored by demi-humans. I don't get, because they have their own pantheon. I don't understand how that works. But supposedly they're honored by dwarves and gnomes. If I was to play a dwarf or a gnome, I'd probably pick a god from one of the dwarf or gnome pantheons, don't you think?
Well, I mean, that probably just, there's probably some circumstance that allowed that to come to be, you know.
Well, it says that it's a muscular human male with a dark beard. And he's very popular in Irongate, Onwell, and Sundee, which is not in my campaign area. He's a brother of Fortubu.
I think that, like, a lot of times with a god like this that has these weird, these, like, different races that are adherent, it's usually, like, something like they were in one place and did something for dwarves, and then they were in another place or time and did something for gnomes, and then does that say orcs too? Orc like Jaskar? Also?
No,
Didn't say orcs?
I don't think it does. It talks about his brother and his hatred of Beltar, which is an evil god. His symbol is a snow-capped mountain peak. He's got a dark beard, silver breastplate. Yeah, he doesn't resemble the Sul people. You know what's also interesting about the gods is sometimes it's the same god by two different names. Like it's really the same god that both pantheons worship. This god go by two different names. Sometimes that is the case. I can't remember which ones are like that, but I just blow it off. I think, you know, if a player wants to get into it, I got the information here for them to delve into. And I do have 2 shrines.
Some gnomes, like some common ground between dwarves and gnomes.
Yeah.
Is like being from underground.
Oh.
At least with some gnome.
Yeah, like Ula is underground. That's a stone maiden's wife. It's about hills, mountains, and gemstones. Not necessarily underground, but of the hills and mountains.
Right, hills and mountains.
The orcs that you were talking about earlier is Jaskar teaches followers to stand against orcs and goblins. That's what it says. So then there's Lear, the lady poet, the lore keeper, goddess of poetry and prose and literature. I have the Conservatory of Lear located in Verbobonc City, and the Lounge of Lear in Rhinehurst. It's more like a tavern with a lot of bards like to hang out at, and a lot of bards worship Lear. So that's great to have those 2 locations for them to work with. Then you have Deleb, the scholar, the scribe. He's Eredin. He's the power of reason and intellect. I guess he's the opposite to Reo. For the Eredin version of Reo. And he's got a major church to Deleb in Verbobonc City. I don't know of any other chapels. Then the last 3, I believe they're the brothers-sisters. I think there's 4 of them, but I only have 3 listed here. Zerbo is for monsters and oceans. His wife, Asprim, of sea voyages and ships and sailors. And Gethia, I think it's the sister, is goddess of lakes, rivers, wells, and streams. I have 2 temples, actually. One's called the Veldiva River, the Temple of the Veldiva River in Verbobonc. And another one, there's various small shrines and villages up and down the Veldiva River. So if you look at the map again, well, let's look at the other map. See all those villages up and down the river? They all have a shrine. So if your character wanted to be like water background, like on the river, like your father was maybe a raft merchant, cargo ship, merchant, and you were raised that way before becoming an adventurer, or maybe your father was a fisherman and you went fishing with him every morning while you were growing up. So you know how to tie knots, you know how to swim, you know how to row a boat, you know, have all those skills from being a fisherman. And your father probably went to the shrine every God's day and worshipped, and you went with your family. You know, that's good reasons right there in your background. Okay, so this article is going to be this video only. and it's going to be, we focused on, starting a cleric in the campaign of Verbobonc. And it's locations of where you could be from. And it's mostly human-centric, but some of it does touch on the elves. And I did not go over the pantheon of the dwarves or the gnomes. And any comments I have about that would be, is Iron. If you look at this map here, you got Iron Delve and you got Rock Hall, and over here farther you have Castle. Well, there's another rock home over here of another clan of dwarves. So if you wanted to be a dwarf in this campaign, that's where you'd be from, and you have that whole dwarven pantheon to choose from. And if you want to be a gnome, you'd be from the Greenway Valley, the Free Assembly of the Cron Hills, which is the name of the organization of the gnomes there, with Prince Jim. Tolvar is their capital, the village of Tolvar. And if you were to be a gnome, you not only can you be from these villages in the Greenway Valley and worship the pantheon of gnomes, but also Sheer Knob outside the valley is a gnome village. And I believe there's half the village of Ostvark is gnomes, and Chiselwood is gnomes. And I think there's another village over here that's gnomes, but I can't remember. I do know that halflings, Littleborough is all halflings. And I think there might be some in Larnystow or Austinbolt. We'll have to look at that again. But those are different articles. So this article was only focusing on clerics, and I didn't really go too far into the demi-humans, except for the elves in the forest. So that should give anybody that was thinking about starting off as a cleric so good background, some good choices of opportunity of developing a really good background for the campaign. Unless they can, or they can choose to use their imagination and pigeonhole their background into one of these other locations and make it work. Like there's no chapel there for them, but maybe that person that they're raised by or they worked for or apprenticed to is there, and he's from somewhere else, but now he's here. Doesn't have a chapel. You could actually do that no problem. In fact, some of these clergies, they travel. They don't have a home base. Maybe they travel along the merchant roads with caravans, like Farlong, or any of these others, Zilchus or whatever. And that's all he does is he goes along with the merchant company, and he's their priest. That's a good idea for a background too. You can come up with so many ideas for a cleric background. And I'm glad I'm able to provide this article to help players, kind of narrow down on what they could be. And so this video is only on the topic of clerics. So what do you think about this so far?
Yeah, looks good. What occurred to me, I didn't really realize that it was just going to be specifically about clerics. As I was thinking, I only know Heinrich. I only know Heinrich's religious affiliation, and I'm not aware of what the others in our campaign. What gods the other characters follow.
Well, Urad, which is a half-orc ranger, he's a gnarly ranger, and he worships Alona, the elven version, Elestra, and he venerates her.
How does that work? How does that work with a half-orc worshiping?
Well, you have to read his background. His background was he was raised by rangers in the gnarly forest. And I don't know who he worships, to tell you the truth. I have to look at his background. But his patrol was captured, slain, raped. Mother got back to his village. I think that was the background. And then they chose to. She died in childbirth, I guess. And the father happened to be a ranger knight. And sorry, I got it backwards. Something like that. Oh, no, that's right. The brother. I'm sorry. He's the uncle. So the brother of his mother, his uncle, is a ranger knight. And so when she died in childbirth, he decided to raise him and taught him how to be a ranger. That's it. It took us a while to come up with that, but it worked out pretty well. So he was accepted. And whenever they see the oak leaves on his shoulder, people get settled down. They see the green cloak of the gnarly, and then they see the oak leaves. And he always keeps that hood down anyway, so you don't really see his face that much. And he's not really too green, just a little tingy green, dirty. And he hides his testicles a lot, he doesn't smile. And so people generally just see the cloak first and the oak leaves first. And he won't talk in public. He just keeps in the background, lets other people talk for him. So that's how he deals with that. It works. I like it. He's a lot more comfortable now that he's more in the gnarly forest right now. You guys are heading south from Sheernab on your way to Ostwerk. So he's got more of his people around. Because he was really uncomfortable in Verbobonc. Yeah, I mean, he saw how they were treating the gnomes. Oh, you weren't there for that, but they were treating the gnomes pretty badly. So anyway, this wraps up this video. I'm glad I was able to finally do this. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. So if anybody want to support my channel, they're welcome to go to my Patreon. That helps a lot. And go ahead and you can recommend other videos you want me to do. And if you want to be a guest on my video to talk about lore or background information or modules in the Verbobonc area of Greyhawk, contact me. I'd love to do a video with you. So thank you so much. Have a happy time gaming and roll 20s.